Win big in 2024 with RotoBaller.com's MLB Premium Pass. It includes our preseason draft kit, 15 exclusive lineup tools, and the Team Sync platform. Get customized rankings for your specific league format. Sync your leagues with Team Sync and use our new live draft assistant. Then get customized advice for your scoring settings. Get a discount for any MLB Premium Pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com, sign up today, and start rotoballing like a boss. The fantasy baseball season is pretty much here. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral link and my referral code, RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests. They got paid contests coming to a state near you. Getting those individual player prop parlay contests. That's a great platform, very unique platform. Check it out. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 129 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. And we are looking forward to UFC Vegas 89 this weekend.
Break out the red panties.
And yeah, last week was not a good one. Why, oh why, did I get suckered into Tai Tuivasa by knockout? In hindsight, I guess that still makes sense. It's just that Marcin Tybura is just such a much more complete mixed martial artist. And win at the heavyweight division, when things are otherwise even, why do we fade that? Obviously, Tybura was going to try to win that fight elsewhere. Damn. Anyway, I believe we still got 14 fights on this card for Saturday, starting at 7 p.m. So I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord from 5 to 6 p.m. and onward on Saturday for the weekly DFS/sports betting Q&A. Show up. Let's talk about UFC Vegas 89. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all major MMA promotions, major boxing events, regional events, and things on UFC Fight Pass. That's at RotoBrady on Twitter. And we got Bellator Champion Series this week. We got Ryzen Landmark 9, Octagon 55, LFA 179. That's hitting all across the board. Follow the podcast on Facebook at Tap That MMA Podcast. On Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify at Tap That MMA Podcast. Let's get into it, because I'm recording this at 10:38 p.m. Thursday night. Congratulations to my wife, Daisy, who got her PhD today in biochemistry. It was a hell of a day. And it was capped off by Kentucky losing to 14-seed Oakland in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. It's been a day of very complicated emotions. Starting off this card, a heavyweight matchup between Muhammad Usman and Mick Parkin, the 8-0 pro out of England. Flyweight, Igor Severino against Andre Lima, two undefeated fighters coming into the UFC. Montserrat Rendon, 6-0 against Daria Zelazinyakova. That is a women's bantamweight fight. Featherweight, Stephen Nugent against Jarno Errens. Bantamweight, Miles Johns against Cody Gibson, the Ultimate Fighter contestant. Ricardo Ramos against Julian Erosa at 145 pounds. Trey Ogden versus Ultimate Fighter winner Kurt Holloway in a lightweight fight. Featherweight, Luis Pejuelo against Fernando Padilla. That's a featherweight fight. Featherweight again, Billy Quarantillo against Yusuf Zaleo. Quarantillo was originally supposed to fight Gabriel Miranda before Miranda withdrew. There was a lot of shakeup on this card because it was like, again, the other day, Justin Taffa was supposed to fight, and they announced Junior Taffa. No, it was the opposite. Justin Taffa was going to fight, and Junior stepped in. Now it's Junior couldn't make the fight, and so now Justin has stepped in. Bantamweight, matchup of great prospects, Cameron Simon and Peyton Talbot. Middleweight, still young, still hungry, Edmund Shabazian against A.J. Dobson. The co-main event, 9-1, Carl Williams taking on Justin Tafa, stepping in for his brother Junior. And a women's flyweight main event between Amanda Ribas and Thug Rose Namajunas.
Break out the red panties.
Let's get right into it. The first fight of the evening, Muhammad Usman against Mick Parkin. Muhammad Usman is a guy that gets a lot of hate. Muhammad Usman has just, despite the wins that he has picked up, has just not been impressive in his time in the UFC still. He's the plus 120 underdog. Mick Parkin, the minus 142 favorite. For Usman, winner of 3 in a row. And the Jake Collier fight was a little bit more of a thing. Against Zach Palga, wins by knockout against a guy that's really a light heavyweight. Only lands 7 strikes, but 2 takedowns and a bunch of control time. Got him the win over Junior Tafa, April of last year. And then he at least landed 85 strikes and a takedown against Jake Collier. But again, you very strongly question the level of competition and how much Muhammad Usman has struggled, against that level of competition. It just has not been an impressive thing. For Mick Parkin, born in 1995, in the Contender Series, got a first-round rear naked choke over Eduardo Neves. Got a unanimous decision victory, landing 95 strikes against Jamal Pogues, and then gets 3 takedowns, lands 39 strikes, got outstruck, but ultimately got a unanimous decision November of last year against Kai Machado. Look, I don't think that Muhammad Usman, he's a big, strong dude. Mick Parkin is just going, the volume and what he's going to be able to stop Muhammad Usman from doing. Mick Parkin is the one that you got to trust more on the feet. I think you trust him more to finish it anywhere that the fight goes, really. But I think that, if they want to take it to the ground, that's, where Parkin is probably going to be putting Muhammad Usman in the most danger. And I think that that's still going to be a serious challenge for Muhammad Usman. I don't think Mick Parkin is the kind of heavyweight prospect that you can lay on, for the majority of a fight and just control with your size and strength. Mick Parkin wins this fight 70, 75 times out of 100, minus 142. Hit it. There we go. Method of victory, I don't know. If Muhammad Usman really wants to try to leverage control time, I think that you could, and I have to refresh this MMA odds real quick. I think if, that is what Muhammad Usman still tries to do, I think he can slow down the fight to a certain point, prevent Parkin from being able to get the finish. And damn it, now where is this? Now I can't find Muhammad Usman odds. That's very straight. There we go. Dear God. All right. Mick Parkin by decision plus 150. Solid number. Usman by decision plus 300. I think that the most likely finishing prop is probably like Parkin by submission plus 800. I could see that happening. Usman by TKO knockout plus 350. I don't know. I'd rather just go with a straight-up victor because I'm very comfortable with Mick Parkin minus 142. Next up, we got the flyweight matchup between Igor Severino and Andre Lima. Severino is the plus 145 underdog. Lima, the minus 175 favorite. Let's start with Severino. Both fighters coming out of Brazil. Severino is 20 years old. 4 wins by knockout, 4 by submission. That's all of his pro wins. Came in with a Contender Series victory over 8-1 Yonata Silva. Came in from jungle fights. Beat some opponents with solid records for sure. But the Contender Series win by second round knockout really did, wins like that do kind of erase a lot of the questions that you have to have about the quality of a guy's level of competition coming into those opportunities. Lima, 25 years old. 5 wins by knockout, 0 by submission, 2 by decision. This guy's been in LFA and Spartacus MMA, 2, more recognizable organizations. He's got a professional kickboxing record as well. Has fought in kickboxing and Muay Thai. His Contender Series win of October of last year was by unanimous decision. And let's see. He landed 61 strikes in that time, got a takedown against Rickson's Zinadim. So, yeah, I think, like, in trying to measure these two guys where, we know a similar amount about them, I think we know more about Andre Lima. That I think that we know that he possesses a potent kickboxing skill set. He I think that Severino being 20 years old too, that's interesting, and obviously he's got a lot of room to grow up, but so does Lima. And being 25, you're a lot closer to having, the maybe the emotional maturity it takes to handle these opportunities, but also just being closer to, the age of being at your muscular peak. I think that all things similar, Lima is the one that is more ready to win at the UFC level, and that kickboxing factor makes a big difference. I think Lima wins this fight like 70 to 75 times out of 100, minus 175. I don't mind it. I'd probably go like Lima by decision, plus 225. Because not even in his Contender Series fight was Lima, was a striking volume that great. I'm comfortable with minus 175, but by decision for Lima isn't a bad number either. Severino, I just don't think, at plus 145 for the questions I have about him, I just don't think that that's worth it. Next up, we got a women's bantamweight matchup between undefeated 6-0 Montserrat Rendon and Daria Zelezniakova, 8-1 professional out of Russia. Sorry, why was I about to say Saryakova? Zelezniakova, the minus 225 favorite. Montserrat Rendon, the plus 185 underdog. Let's start with Daria. I know that she's already popular. People are talking about her and have been talking about her all week. 28 years old. Currently ranked as the world's 51st best female bantamweight. 5 wins by knockout, 0 by sub, 3 by decision. Coming in from Aries FC. Excuse me. Her last win was April of last year against Marie Lauzon. Her most recent loss, it was just 2 fights ago. November 2022, she got TKO in the first round by Melissa Tanya Mullins. Now, Montserrat Rendon won her UFC fight, that she's had September of last year by split decision, outstriking Tamires Vidal 69-60, getting 3 takedowns. Before that, Rendon obviously has had a very brief professional career. She is 35 years old. She came in with 1 fight and Invicta. Tamires Vidal, just to measure that, she's 25 years old, 7-2 as a pro, has a UFC win against Romana Pascal. So it's not a horrible loss by any stretch. But still, this is a tough mixture. It's Rendon, if she was 32, I would have no questions. But once you get up to 35, there's a clock on every fighter. So that makes me a little bit uncertain. Daria, certainly has a pretty impressive resume coming into the UFC. It's just not that many wins at Aries. And, before, this is going to be a step up in competition by a major stretch. Rendon, 6-0 as a pro at 35 is crazy. I'm inclined to just go, I think this is maybe this could be like a 50-50 fight. Rendon, I don't think that, I mean, her win being against Tamires Vidal for, I think that this is like a 50-50 fight. I can't, say that strong. 35, the questions aren't that big to where when you have a UFC win within the last year against someone making their UFC debut and you're getting plus 185, I think Montserrat Rendon wins at least 50 of these fights out of 100. Absolutely hit that. And I don't feel the need to go with a prop here. If I do, probably Rendon by decision, and that is going to be at plus 215. So not a huge jump there, but that's the one I'd be looking at. Next up, we've got a featherweight fight between Jarno Errens and Steven Nugent. I guess it's actually Steven Wynn. I got to get that straight. Steven Wynn is going to be the minus 185 favorite. Errens, the plus 154 underdog. Let's start off with Jarno Errens, for which this episode is named. 2 losses in the UFC. Not a bad competition, both by unanimous decision to the likes of William Gomi and Sungwoo Choi back in August of 2023. Got outstruck in both fights, got out taken down. He got a knockdown against Sungwoo Choi, but he got knocked down as well. And so, it just has not been an impressive run there for Jarno Errens. Steven Wynn, on the other hand, born in 1993, has 2 wins in the Contender Series. 1 loss. He started off with a loss in the Contender Series July 2019, got knocked out by Elon Cruz. Then rattled off 2 straight victories, a unanimous decision win over Theo Relayang, where he landed 126 strikes and then just landed 103 strikes against AJ Cunningham September of last year and got a second-round knockout. Yeah, I agree with Steven Wynn being the favorite here. Jarno Errens has showed me nothing. And Steven Wynn, since his loss in the Contender Series, I think just on the striking volume alone, I think that is going to pose major problems for Jarno Errens statistically based on how the last 2 fights for him have played out. I think Steven Wynn wins this fight like Steven Wynn, going to get the win probably 80 to 85 times out of 100 the way I'm feeling. Minus 185, I'm comfortable with it. And then, Jarno hasn't been finished yet. So until further notice, I would say that Wynn triple digits him up or, at least gets upwards of 90. Win by decision plus 140. And Jarno Errens, I just don't even know, so I don't care to pick that one. I just don't feel good about that one either way. Jarno Errens.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
And as to your last performance, we go to Canada.
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
Just needed to get some sound drops in there. Next up, and I think that Steven Wynn should be, popular and at a moderate price this week in DFS. We got a bantamweight matchup between Miles Johns and Cody Gibson, the Ultimate Fighter contestant. Gibson is the plus 120 underdog. Miles Johns, the minus 142 favorite. Let's go to Miles Johns first. Only has 1 win in his last 3 fights. That fight against Dan Argueta ended up being overturned. I think that was actually... that was a failed drug test by Miles Johns. Right, okay. So, without that, he beat Dan Argueta. Vince Morales was another win by unanimous decision, but back in November of 2022. It shouldn't be that long ago that already is, but it is. And then a loss to John Castaneda where he got outstruck 58-34 and knocked down once, subbed with a round 3 arm triangle, February of 2022. I will just say that Vince Morales, he's got more losses and wins at the UFC, but, consider maybe the level of competition that he's faced with his last, 3 losses being Chris Gutierrez, Jonathan Martinez, and Miles Johns. Maybe not as bad as that seems. Cody Gibson, born in 1987. He is 7 years older. He will have a 5-inch reach advantage. Here's the problem. Cody Gibson made it far in the Ultimate Fighter, made it to the finale, and lost to Brad Katona in a very close fight, one that I thought Brad Katona won. But, I never hold losses against a guy like Brad Katona against anybody because that's a guy that is just very good at point fighting and has the skill set to do it. The problem with Cody Gibson is now at the UFC level, not counting the Ultimate Fighter, He's 1-4. Granted, the two of the first losses were to Aljamain Sterling and Manvel Gambarian. But, now it's 2 straight losses against the likes of Douglas Silva de Andrade and Brad Katona. Cody Gibson is a dog. I'll absolutely give him that. But it's just, when you're at this point, time is not on Cody Gibson's side. Miles Johns, has at least done some winning, consistently at the UFC. He takes losses, and it seems that he bounces back and wins. And, even the no contest, that was a fight that was going good for him. That's question mark. It's definitely a question mark of how you bounce back from your last fight being an overturned no contest. Sure. But I see no reason why I can have faith in Cody Gibson to get a win at the UFC level. And this is, this isn't a fight that was made to get him back on the winning track like we see in some instances with those Ultimate Fighter guys. This is another tough one. And I think that Miles Johns has just shown the skill set that he's, can be a consistent winner in the UFC. Miles Johns on that, just because Cody Gibson keeps coming up short. I think Miles Johns wins this fight like 65 to 70 times out of 100, maybe 75, minus 142. Hit it. And I'd say, I don't know. I don't need to bet a prop on that one. If I was going to pick one, I'd go Johns inside the distance plus 250. By decision plus 180 isn't horrible. I just think that inside the distance might actually be the better value. Next up, we've got a featherweight matchup between Ricardo Ramos and Julian Erosa. Erosa is the plus 142 underdog. Ricardo Ramos, the minus 170 favorite. Let's start off with Julian Erosa. Juicy J, born in 1989, with a 74-inch reach for this weight class. That's all right. He seems lengthier than that. He was on a really good run between September of 2021 and September of 2022. 3 straight wins against Charles Jourdain, Steven Peterson, and Hakeem Dawodu, where he landed at least 92 strikes across all 3 fights and a combined 7 takedowns. Now he's lost 2 in a row. He got knocked out by Alex Caceres, Bruce Leroy, December of 2022. Love Bruce Leroy. And then to bounce back and get knocked out by Fernando Padilla. Who then went on to lose to Kyle Nelson. Now we're seeing Julian Erosa get finished. Against probably a lower level of competition. This is a guy with a win against Sean Woodson, Nate Landwehr, Charles Jourdain. He was on a really good winning streak. And now we go to Ricardo Ramos, born in 1995, a 72-inch reach. And, going back just a little bit to July of 2020, this is a guy that's been in the UFC really since 2017. One of his first loss was Saeed Nurmagomedov. But, he lost to Lerone Murphy, got knocked out in the first round, July of 2020. Gets a win over Bill Algeo, getting outstroked 76-53, but landed 8 takedowns. Loses a UD to Zubaira Tukagov. Bounces back June of 2022 with a first-round spinning back elbow against Danny Chavez. And then just got subbed super fast September of 2023 in the first round against Charles Jourdain. Julian Erosa, he's now 35? Almost 35. That's not old enough for me. I don't think that the evidence suggests that we should lose faith in Julian Erosa yet. For not being, if he was 37, it'd be one thing, but, just being 2 fights separated from a really solid 3-fight winning streak and going 5-1 from June of 2020 to September of 2022. Bruce Leroy is a guy that has made a living off of bouncing back and getting wins when people are sleeping on him the most. I mean, for God's sake, Bruce Leroy has actually won 7 of his last 9 fights, dating back to July of 2019. And then, Fernando Padilla, I think the jury's a little bit more out, but a loss to Kyle Nelson certainly does not discount you, from being considered a high-quality loss or, at least a loss to a solid opponent. I think that there's plenty here for me to say that, like, Ricardo Ramos, what am I supposed to be impressed with there? Julian Erosa, I think, has the skill set to keep Ramos at bay and keep him from, putting him on his back. That was, a big key to, now the key here is that Ramos is probably the more likely of the two to get a finish. Or, like, for me to be able to pick specifically, like, Ramos by TKO knockout, that's at plus 250. I think that's probably the best prop of the fight. But, Julian Erosa, I think, wins this fight 40 times out of 145, maybe even 50. I think that this is a very even fight. And, I think that this just feels like a trick. Because Erosa is not that far separated, and those losses just do not tell us that we should lose faith in him. When, Ricardo Ramos, the activity level has just not been there, and he got finished very easily by Charles Jourdain, a guy that Julian Erosa beat. The Algeo win probably being his best. That's where I'm leaning. I'm saying Julian Erosa plus 142, hit it. And I don't think we need to pick a prop for Julian Erosa, because I think that, he's going to be at the greater advantage when the fight enters chaos if he can keep the finishing shot from landing. Lightweight, Kurt Holloway, the Ultimate Fighter winner against Trey Ogden. Ogden is the minus 155 favorite. Holloway the plus 130 underdog. Let's talk about Kurt Holloway. This is the tough thing too, right? Like, and Holloway at least has a recent win and recent performances on The Ultimate Fighter where he just looked so revitalized. You look at the guys that Kurt Holloway had to fight. When he started off in the UFC in 2013, then, his three last losses in the UFC were to Raoni Barcelos, where he landed 102 strikes but got finished in the third round. He got subbed by Shane Burgos, and then he lost a unanimous decision to Thiago Moises, May of 2019. But he looked fantastic in his fight against Austin Hubbard. And Austin Hubbard is a guy that I would probably be saying very similar things about in comparison to Trey Ogden if Hubbard had been the one to win. But Holloway lands 61 strikes, gets taken down twice by Hubbard, but he's the one who finishes a triangle choke in the second round. Born in 1986, by the way. Trey Ogden, born in 1989. Has a win over Daniel Zellhuber. It's his only win in the UFC. Because the last fight against Nicholas Mata got overturned. So that's a no contest, November of 2023. He has losses to Jordan Leavitt and Ignacio Bahamondes, both by decision. He got outstruck in both, and only one takedown was landed across both those two losses. And against Daniel Zellhuber, outstriking him 71-52 with a takedown. Zellhuber, it's crazy because Trey Ogden is the only blemish on that guy's resume. But like Trey Ogden can't win besides that. And Ignacio is very good too. Jordan Leavitt, he's like a 50-50 fighter no matter who you put him against at a certain level of competition. I'm just kind of like more and more falling in love with this Kurt Holloway pick. I don't know why. I think that Holloway is just such a good pressure, and he applies pressure. He throws with good volume, and he's just dangerous anywhere that it goes. Talking about his time on The Ultimate Fighter recently, knocks out Jason Knight, and his first fight was against the Prospect with a round 2 submission against Lee Hammond. And a fight that I think like maybe Lee was finding a little bit of success. But like your last 2 wins are Austin Hubbard and Jason Knight. I think that, Holloway looks revitalized. And if Trey Ogden was a guy born in 1997, maybe I'd have more questions. But I think that this is a very even fight. And I think that, Holloway is the more likely of the two to get a finish. I might like Holloway a lot in DFS this week, depending on, if he's like a $15 or under guy. Let's see how it shakes out. I think Holloway wins this fight 50 times out of 100. So plus 130, absolutely. And I don't think you need to pick a prop here. If you want to, I would more go just like Ogden by decision, plus 140. I think that's the best individual method of victory value. Next up, we've got a featherweight matchup between Fernando Padilla and Luis Pajuelo. Pajuelo, the plus 142 underdog. Padilla, the minus 170 favorite. Let's start off with Fernando Padilla. As I discussed, knocked out Julian Erosa April of 2023 in his UFC debut, and just got a little bit outworked by Kyle Nelson at UFC Fight Night Grasso versus Shevchenko 2, September of last year, outstruck 82-72. Born in 1996, by the way, has a 76-inch reach for featherweight, according to UFC stats. So then, Pajuelo, who is, I believe, out of Peru. Corazon de Leon, 8-1 as a pro, 29 years old. Got a first-round knockout against Robbie Ring in the Contender Series August of last year. Came in from Fusion FC, which is a UFC Fight Pass level organization. You can at least say that. His last opponent was 13-2, Heber Federico Pereira. There's an extra Y in there that makes it tough. There's not a lot here to say that, like, we don't like Pajuelo. I think that, yeah, he's probably, deserving to have this opportunity. And I think that there's probably going to be a lot of fighters in this weight class that he can beat. I just think that we have enough evidence to say that Fernando Padilla is going to be the better fighter. 27 years old. I think that the loss to Kyle Nelson will probably be good for him because Kyle Nelson is, a very competitive fighter at this weight class who's fought some really tough dudes too. I just, with a win over Julian Erosa, it just solidifies you a little bit more. I think that Padilla probably wins this fight like 75 times out of 100, minus 170. I don't hate it at all. I'd probably go Padilla inside the distance, plus 150. I think that is a phenomenal number. Fight doesn't go to decision. It's minus 165. I don't think that's as good. If I'm going Pajuelo, let's see. I mean, if I'm picking Pajuelo, I guess you got to go by knockout, right? Because 7 of his career 8 professional wins have come by that method. Pajuelo, that number is plus 350. I would delve into those a little bit more. I just think, with the questions we might have about Pajuelo against a guy that is at least a proven UFC winner in Padilla, I just think you got to divert to that guy winning in the way that is proven, most effective throughout his pro career to this point. Next up, we got a featherweight matchup between Billy Quarantillo and Yusuf Zalal. Yusuf Zalal got the call back from the UFC to step in because Billy Q needed an opponent. This is so crazy that Billy Quarantillo started off, I think, like minus 170. And I think I got him at minus 142. And now this fight is at pick'em almost. In one book, I'm seeing it as pick'em on DraftKings, I think, right now. And then, the rest, I'm seeing Quarantillo very, very slightly favored. But this line has been moving like crazy. And so let's start with Yusuf Zalal. Zalal, 13-5-1, 27 years old. He hasn't fought in the UFC since August of 2022, which is kind of crazy. Because it seems like it's one more recent than that. And he started off with 3 straight UFC wins. But then, those losses came to Ilia Topuria by decision, Sungwoo Choi by decision, Sean Woodson by decision, and then had a majority draw with Damon Blackshear. Since then, he was in Sparta. It's just called Sparta. An SCL, won a boxing match, won a kickboxing match. His last win was against 0-0-0, Vadim Zadnipriani, by first-round arm triangle, August of last year. Billy Quarantillo, on the other hand, winner of 3 of his last 5. Started off his UFC career with a 4-fight winning streak, including Kamela Kirk, Jacob Kilburn, Spike Carlisle, and Kyle Nelson. Those 3 wins since July of 2021, a 3rd-round knockout against Gabriel Benitez, a 2nd-round knockout against Alexander Hernandez, and a unanimous decision victory against Damon Jackson. By the way, he landed 100, 87, and 100 strikes in those 3 fights. The fight that he lost was to Shane Burgos by unanimous decision. He still landed 164 strikes there, and then he got knocked out early in the first round against Edson Barboza, April of 2023. Look, Yusuf Zalal, over a more recent time frame, had his chance against a comparable level of competition to Billy Q. It probably averages out to Billy Q. But it's just that not being able to get the win against Damon Blackshear and just whatever the hell his last opponent was supposed to be in Sparta. Billy Quarantillo, has been fighting really good opponents and getting good wins. And this is just, it's great that Yusuf Zalal is stepping in, but Yusuf Zalal.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
And I don't know, Billy Quarantillo just is a dog. He wears you down. He wears it out of your face. You can read it on people. So, I think that Zalal could survive this and make it to the judges' scorecards. But I think Billy Quarantillo wins this fight 80 to 85 times out of 100. What is Pickup? Hit it so hard. And Quarantillo by decision, plus 140, that's all right. I don't think you need to do that. Zalal by decision, plus 185, that's not really a good number either. And I think Billy Q should be very popular in DFS this week. I know that I'm going to try to make room for him. If you're telling me that this guy might be in even the $15 to $18 range, absolutely. Next up, we got a bantamweight matchup between Peyton Talbot and Cameron Simon. Simon, the plus 124 underdog. Talbot, the minus 148 favorite. Let's start with Simon. So he is South African. That is important. It helps fuel our knowledge on how to pronounce his name. 9-1 as a professional. Born in the year 2000. They made fighters this century, apparently. They're still making them. Winner of, 4 of his last 5. He got that win in the Contender Series by third-round knockout. Got a knockout in the third round again against Stephen Kozlow in his real UFC debut. He's only been on pay-per-views, by the way. They really like what they see in him, at least as far as the draw goes. Especially South Africa now when you see the reaction that Dricus du Plessis has gotten. A majority decision victory over Mana Martinez March of last year. 117 strikes landed and a knockdown. Still crazy that was a majority decision when you see how it ended up on paper. And then a first-round knockout over Terrence Mitchell, July of 2023. He stepped back in one more time against Christian Rodriguez, October of 2023. He loses, gets outstruck 83 to 73, taken down 3 times. Rodriguez, a guy that we have now seen get 4 wins in a row, with his only loss being to Jonathan Pierce. Those 2 wins include, Raul Rosas Jr. and Cameron Simon. He just got the win this past weekend against Isaac Dulgarian. But even though I benefited from that, there is just no way that Christian Rodriguez ended up taking 2 of those 3 rounds. Because there was a 10-8. There should have been, maybe there was 2 10-8s. But I just don't know how you make an argument for Christian Rodriguez outside of the third round in that fight. It probably should have been a draw, but 29-28 Dulgarian would have been very acceptable, or 29-27. So that's me talking about Christian Rodriguez. But that's Cameron Simon's loss. At least a guy in Christian who has, fought several of the young up-and-comers in this weight class, and now so many times in a row has come out on top. Peyton Talbot, Contender Series veteran, landed 145 strikes against Reyes Cortez Jr. August of last year. Then made his real UFC debut against Nick Aguirre. A UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Craig. It's a third-round rear naked choke. Talbot, to go a little deeper, 7-0, 25 years old. Came in from Uriah Faber's A1 Combat. That's where his, 3 professional fights before the Contender Series took place. And he's now finished 6 of his 7 pro fights with 1 submission, the rest being by knockout. This is really tough. I do think that Cameron Simon is being unfairly punished for his loss to Christian Rodriguez. And it's just crazy to me to see a guy that, was looked at as one of the top prospects at this weight. It seems like the lack of respect, and everybody is looking forward to this fight. In fact, we'll give it that.
Break out the red panties.
It's been called the people's main event on the internet this week, but it seems like people are way more excited for Peyton Talbot. And I do think that he is more exciting. I don't think that this fight goes the distance. I think that we will see, very early in this fight, like who's going to have the upper hand and, see where another guy might need to take it to a different department. It's just hard to say that Cameron Simon in this fight is not like that. This isn't a 50-50 matchup. We still haven't seen Peyton Talbot, consistently at the UFC level. The win against Nick Aguirre is good. It's just not a whole lot. I think both these guys will be popular in DFS this week. I think that makes sense, and this is a pretty closely handicapped fight. I don't know. I think that this might be a 50-50 matchup. I am inclined to go with Cameron Simon. But, I think that, Talbot inside the distance plus 240, Simon inside the distance plus 500. I would probably end up going, Simon inside the distance too. So I think the inside the distance numbers are the one to go with here. I'm just opting for the guy. They're both young. I'm going with the guy with the most UFC experience, and I just don't want to punish Cameron Simon that much for the loss to Christian Rodriguez. So that's where I'm leaning. But this is just one where we're going to find out, I think, very quickly. And it's definitely, one of the top fights that I'm looking forward to this week. I might end up being extremely wrong, and that, I think, would still end up in a very exciting fight that I'm interested in the result of. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup between Edmund Shabazian and A.J. Dobson. A.J. Dobson, the plus 170 underdog. Edmund Shabazian, the minus 205 favorite. Let's start with A.J. Dobson. Let's get this out of the way. All right, he's coming off a win against Stefan Nchukwi August of 2023 by unanimous decision. Outstruck him 67-53 with 2 takedowns. His 2 losses are to Armin Petrosian and Jacob Malkoun, both by decision, where he landed a combined 110 strikes across those 2 fights. Has a win in the Contender Series by rear naked choke as well. Born in 1992. Edmund, born in 1997. The Golden Boy will be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage. And this is the wild thing, right? Edmund is still so young. And, after the Jack Marshman wins and the Brad Tavares wins back in 2019, now close to 5 years ago, he was put in that mini middleweight Grand Prix to see who would get a title shot, and he just got thoroughly worked by Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, Nasruddin Imavov 3 times in a row, got knocked out in 2 of those, and was really just brutalized throughout the majority of those fights. It wasn't just that he lost, it was that he looked hopeless in there. He bounced back December 2022 at UFC 282 with a second-round knockout of Dolce Lungiambula, and we thought he was back after that. It seemed like Edmund was revitalized. He still looked like he was kind of losing steam throughout the fight, but it was still, him bouncing back in the winning column, and he didn't look hopeless in there. And then he gets knocked out in the 3rd round against Anthony Fluffy Hernandez May of last year. It's just crazy, right? Because, I want nothing more than to say that Edmund Shabazian wins this fight. He still has all the upward trajectory in the world, man. He's still so talented. What is he, 26 years old right now? He's either 26 or 27. This guy was, really a couple wins away from a title shot 5 years ago. And he's still a guy with so much time to make his way up in the UFC. And, with A.J. Dobson's last win to Fawn, that's a guy that you really got to question at the UFC level. When one of his 3 wins was Jamie Pickett, who, looked all right against Eric Anders, really, but still doesn't excuse it. The losses are to all right competition, but I don't know how much that win means for A.J. Dobson. It's just, how do you trust Edmund Shabazian right now? I want with all of my heart to say that Edmund Shabazian is a good pick at minus 205, but I just can't. I think that line has moved a little bit. And I think that, like, this is one that I would just kind of wholly avoid because of the Edmund factor. I just don't know. He might have gotten so much better from the last fight. You just don't know, but it just has not gone well other than the Dolce fight where he still showed, some holes where it wasn't a perfect performance by any means. So, like, I guess A.J. Dobson plus 170 is the value. And that would really be, a real nail in Edmund Shabazian. But, it's one that I don't want to pick. And if I was going for DFS, I'd probably go Edmund just because he's the more likely of the two to get the finish and probably get, a knockout. And hopefully that would have to come early for him. That's plus 130. I don't hate that. But it's going to be hard to pay that price for Edmund. It's just one that I think you should avoid, but that's how I feel about that fight in general. If I wanted to bet with my heart, I would go with Edmund Shabazian. I'd go by TKO knockout. Otherwise, AJ Dobson plus 170. I don't know. I think this is a 50-50 fight right now, and I think that if I had to give the edge to one fighter, maybe I have to go AJ Dobson. But Edmund Shabazian just isn't a great value at minus 205. I still think he's the more likely of the two to win. He might win 55 to 60 of these out of 100. He's the more likely of the two to get a finish. It's just all kinds of confusing feelings on that one. And we are now to the co-main event of the evening. It is a heavyweight matchup between Justin Tafa stepping in for his brother Junior Tafa against one Carl Williams, currently ranked number 37 in the world at heavyweight. Justin Tafa ranked 25th according to Topology. But the odds don't reflect that. Carl Williams is the minus 185 favorite. Justin Tafa the plus 154 underdog. Let's start with Justin Tafa. So, he has won 3 of his last 4 fights. There was a no contest against Austin Lane that he avenged with a first-round knockout. That was his last fight at UFC 293, September of 2023. His other wins are Parker Porter and friend of the podcast, Harry Hunsucker, all by first-round knockout. He's lost to the likes of Jorgen De Castro, Carlos Felipe, Jared Vanderaa. Jared Vanderaa outstruck him 121 to 74, and there wasn't a knockdown in the fight. That is concerning. And Austin Lane, he was a guy that I might have even liked in that fight, but just continues to lose in these fights where you have an opportunity to prove yourself against what should be a winnable opponent or a beatable opponent. Carl Williams, born in 1990, he will have a 5-inch reach advantage. His 3 wins have come against Jimmy Lawson in the Contender Series by unanimous decision, only allowing 1 strike from Jimmy Lawson over the course of 3 rounds as he, just got 3 takedowns and leverage control time. Then he gets 8 takedowns against Lucas Bresky in March of 2023, lands 38 strikes, gets a knockdown, UD. Then against Chase Sherman last time. Now we're talking a little bit. 70 strikes to 54 with a takedown, still wins by unanimous decision. Yeah, I think you're actually kind of getting Carl Williams at a decent number here. Carl Williams with the Chase Sherman win, I think that proves just a little bit. Tafa with the win against Parker Porter, all right. I like Parker Porter. He's a dog and he's a tough, he's made a lot of tough fights for people, but has shown that ceiling, and Justin Tafa, he's not an old dude, he's just a little bit over 30. This is a fight where, minus 185, I think Carl Williams wins this fight probably 65, 70, 75 times out of 100. I don't love a straight-up victor here. I guess if I was to say that, yeah, because it's the props that are clear. Tafa by TKO knockout plus 215. Tafa in round 1 plus 360. And then Williams by decision plus 165. Probably my favorite pick of the fight. Hit it. Because that's like getting the favorite at plus money. I think that's how he wins this fight. Carl Williams has shown a lack of interest in finishing fights. Even he did get the knockdown the last time out. But a fight in the Contender Series where you hold Jimmy Lawson to 1 strike over the course of 3 rounds. So getting him at plus money for that, I think that's an excellent value. This is a fight where you want to pick props. And I could see Justin Tafa at a lower price being kind of popular in DFS this week. I just don't know that this is a fight where Carl Williams is going to rack up too many stats in a winning effort, because that's probably going to be centered around avoiding the big strikes of Justin Tafa. But, I'm more interested in seeing Carl Williams win than I am Justin Tafa, because there's just, once you get to a certain point, there's just some guys that are well-rounded enough to where I do not think Justin Tafa can, beat a certain level of competition. Carl Williams, even though he's a little bit older than Justin Tafa, I think the jury is still out on. So if he can just keep winning after a fight against Chase Sherman where he showed a lot more than he had in the previous two fights, I'm willing to be invested in the future of Carl Williams a little bit. And by the way, that guy, country-wise, I always forget what this flag is. Oh, the Virgin Islands. Cool. Love to see that. Love to see it. And now, folks, we are to the main event of the evening.
Break out the red panties.
It is a women's flyweight matchup. Amanda Ribas, who will be the plus 180 underdog, against Thug Rose Namajunas, the minus 218 favorite. Let's start off with Amanda Ribas. I have less to say on that front. Because here's the thing, too. This is now her second. She fought several people at flyweight. Her last fight was at strawweight against Luana Pinheiro. And she got a third-round knockout victory. It's a lot of hopping around to different weight classes. It's a little unusual. And Ribas, born in 1993 with a 66-inch reach, her last three wins over Irina Jandiroba, Vivian Araujo, both by decision, and then that third-round knockout against Pinheiro. Losses since January of 2021 to Marina Rodriguez, Caitlin Sermonera, formerly Caitlin Chukagian, and Macy Barber. These were all fights where she put up, at least the last two losses against Caitlin and Macy. They were at least, semi-respectable performances. She did get finished in two out of those by second-round knockout. Wins before that, though, her first four wins in the UFC were to Emily Whitmire, Mackenzie Dern, Rhonda Marcos, and Paige Van Zandt. Say what you will, I think that, that's a decent winning streak. And now she just struggled to string any amount of wins together. Rose Namajunas, born in 1992, will be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage. Yeah, this is one where I was going to have a lot of questions about Rose, I think, just from the surface. But you look back, it was not that long ago, from July of 2020 to November of 2021, she got a split decision win over Jessica Andrade after losing that strawweight title to her. Regains it with a first-round knockout over Zhang Wei Li, and then defends it with a split decision victory in a fight that I actually thought that Thug Rose lost. And I think a lot of people are kind of on that same point, too. It seemed to be more the consensus than the exception, for sure. Then, two straight losses. Carla Cookie Monster Esparza just has Rose's numbers. That's a matchup that has been favorable to her. And that was a title fight that everybody hated. And it still ended up being a split decision loss. Then against Manon Furiot, last time out, September of 2023, she outstruck Manon 60-58. It was a unanimous decision loss. Ended up being scored 29-28 on two of the judges' scorecards, 30-27 on Judge Daryl Ransom's scorecard. But it was for those two last, you lose the title May of 2022 in what was a close yet, super insignificant fight. In fact,
but I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to.
And then a very respectable performance against Manon Furiot that I didn't think she won. Definitely, that was a decision where the outcome was not really in question, but it was still competitive enough, a weight class up against one of the biggest prospects at the weight. I think I just have to go Rose. Amanda Ribas just cannot string two straight wins together. she's coming off a win. I'm not saying I'm basing it exclusively off of that, but, the 3 wins are against solid opponents, but I just don't think that she's going to be able to get the striking volume off against Thug Rose. She landed 88, 98, and 87 across those 3 victories and got a knockout the last time against Luana. But, people are talking about Rose like she's washed almost. She's, I don't think even a year, maybe a little less than a little over a year older than Amanda Ribas. I don't think that, Rose didn't take a bunch of damage against Carla. And to come out on top, to even have it close with Zhang Weili is still huge for how recent that was. I love Thug Rose, all the weird things about, her life aside. I love watching her fight. I've loved, her career and one of the greatest upsets in the history of the UFC. Remember...
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
But she did. So I think Thug Rose wins this fight 75 to 80 times out of 100. She is not done. She might not ever compete for a title again. But I do think that she is still very competitive, and I don't think that Amanda Ribas is of that quality. And if Rose does lose this fight, then I'm going to have serious questions about, the kind of opponent she might be able to handle moving forward. As far as outcome, I don't know. The fight probably goes the distance. The more likely of the two to get a finish, I'd probably say Rose. Rose inside the distance, plus 380. Or no, plus 120. By decision is plus 250. Probably inside the distance is a better value, especially over 5 rounds. And Ribas by decision, and I think that would just be in, out volume striking Rose if that isn't a problem for her. If Rose has lost a step or just, is not carrying that at flyweight and Ribas is a little bit more better suited for the weight class, then Ribas by decision plus 450, I think that's probably the best number for her. And, folks, that is it for episode 129 of RotoBallers' official MMA podcast. Have that. Looking forward to UFC Vegas 89 this weekend. Kicking off at 7 p.m. That means I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord from 5 to 6 p.m. and onward for the weekly MMA DFS / sports betting Q&A. Show up. Let's talk about these fights. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady for all my picks on major UFC or major MMA events around the world, regional promotions, UFC Fight Pass events, major boxing matches and events. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady, and then follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow, subscribe, leave favorable comments and reviews. Tell your friends. Thanks for listening. Day 1 of the NCAA tournament. Kentucky's out of it. So try to enjoy all the great mixed martial arts action that we got across the globe this week. Thanks for listening. Enjoy it all. And peace.
Break out the red panties.